tired to follow with us with our notorious speakers. I must confess that I am the luckiest among all the attendees. I have with me here very notorious speakers that will get us closer to some of the problematic developments and experiences in the MENA region, because I believe that the problems that and there are a lot of similarities in the Middle East. And also, I believe that we have some good experiences that are happening especially in Middle Eastern countries. So, without no further delay, I will welcome Dr. Gregory Curtin and let him, as my colleagues did this morning, present himself.
Great. Let's just do this. Great, thank you. It's very good to be here. First, I want to thank some of the folks who have got us here. President Ben Said, Dr. Katani, Imad Tanawi for sponsoring. This is great. And Rana. Absolutely, and I am. If any of you have interacted with Rana yet, I'm convinced she is an AI. Food is where it needs to be. Travel logistics done. Please, another round of. As I said to her this morning, she's AI incarnate, and maybe that was the purpose of the conference, was to have her there. So thank you very much. As the first international AI4D conference here in Morocco, I think this is very exciting. I want to first tell you just a little bit about myself. I'll try and keep it short. As Richard and others know, it's a very varied and strange background that's led me here. But I want to sort of bounce off of what Dr. Katani was saying this morning about, well, we have academia here, we have public sector here, government, engineers, maybe a few private sector people. And I agree, we have to bring private sector people to the table. I'm a private sector people right now. My background going way back, actually, I started my career as a public school teacher in the inner cities in the city of Los Angeles. I then actually went on and became a government attorney working with the city of Los Angeles, the county of Los Angeles, the state of California. I actually met one of the previous speakers here who had to leave, Dr. Jeannie Holm, at that time, working with her through various things. I then actually went on to become a professor at the University of Southern California, where we started the first ever the e-governance lab, a digital lab specifically around government and the use of digital technologies in government. That actually then led to working with the United Nations, where I actually met Richard early on, for over a decade, designing and helping them run and manage their, what is still, we were just chatting about it, which is still the premier and benchmark publication and research out there on global e-governance across the board, all countries. I worked with the World Economic Forum in their future of government and future of infrastructure in cities committee, so very appropriate to this as well. And through that, I actually have done a significant amount of work, probably over the last, a decade now, throughout MENA and the Arab region on smart cities, smart infrastructure, digital economy. So I have quite a bit of experience time in Morocco, so I'm very excited to be here. I hope I do well enough in this that I'm invited back sometime soon. So all of that brings you up to speed to today. So with all that strange and crazy experience, a few years back, I actually then, just because, went in and started a Silicon Valley startup, specifically for a data platform, big data platform in smart infrastructure and smart cities. The company was called Civic Connect, did quite a bit of work globally. And just this past year, that company, I was merged into a spin-out from Inmarsat, the global satellite company. They spun out their IoT business unit, merged it with my company to create a global environmental and infrastructure risk management company. So I bring that experience to bear, all cloud-based, all data, all AI and everything. So I'm going to bring that to bear today, all those bits and pieces on this. I was asked, and I think it's appropriate, to kind of maybe set up the other speakers a little bit by giving a global context and a MENA context in terms of the future of AI. And I think it worked out, well, kudos to Dr. Katani, who gave the program rationale before. Again, a little bit of AI going on. You knew this was coming. Nicely done. I was hoping, and it's borne out, most of the previous speakers have hit all the various topics that you would drill down into, technical, tactical, and the like, and that would allow me to sort of kind of bump it up a little bit, speak at a broader level about what we can do, what's going on, what types of things are actually happening around AI for development. And I think that's very important that we keep it at the AI for development. And so with that, I'm going to continue on and try and get through this pretty quickly because Dr. Pardo, Richard, and the other speakers all have quite a bit to say. Okay. Very quickly, this just gives you a flavor. Obviously, we could spend days, weeks, months, and we have previously working on MENA, the digital economy, what's happening. But just some sort of big picture items of what's happening out there across the region that present what I think are opportunities for AI, digitization, and technology across the board. It's a huge and growing population. One of the previous speakers said the predictions are it's going to double or more, and it probably will. The predictions are by 2050, the population will have doubled. And it's a very diverse population, which if you're not from the region, most of the rest of the world does not understand it. They think of Middle East, North Africa, the Arabic countries as being very, very homogeneous. And that's not true. That's an opportunity, especially in this current global economy. The MENA economy forecast, and the World Bank just came out with their 2022 update, is forecasting a fairly healthy growth rate of over 5% for 2022 and beyond. That's great. I mean, that's excellent given the current economic situation in the world. I think these next couple of things are really important to touch on. And again, outside of the MENA region, much of this is not really thought of or known. There's an increasing economic diversification. We had numerous of the speakers previously talk about the renewable energy move across the region, which is very interesting because that obviously is in direct conflict with the traditional extractive oil petroleum industries. And yet, that truly provides a big opportunity. And I know AUI is doing quite a bit of work in renewables, so that's interesting. Quite a bit of work and opportunities in modernizing and making smart agriculture. And think of every region out there has to have a robust agriculture because of our food and water security issues across the board. And then technology. Quite a bit of the work that we've done and that I've done down in the Gulf region, for instance, has been all around digitization, big data, smart cities, smart infrastructure, and the like. That's a huge asset across the region, and we heard today moves across the board at the city level here in Ifrane and other places across the region moving into that smart city, smart government, smart infrastructure. This next one, and I've bolded it because it's probably one of the critical pieces. An increasingly young and increasingly educated population. Here we are at a university, the first university of its kind, speak English, put an English platform out there to start working across the board. That's huge. Across MENA, increasing enrollment in tertiary education, college, university, or vocational specialized professional education. That's big. That's very big when we think about future of AI, future of technology in the region. 2/3 of the population are currently under the age of 35. 1/3 are between the ages of 15 and 25. If you take a step back, and like I said, I work quite a bit in education and workforce development, that younger cohort are this very moment and will be transitioning to what becomes the most productive years over the next decade or so. The most productive years for those persons as individuals, but if the region, the countries, the provinces, whatever, can capture that, that's the most productive engine for the regional economy as they come on. Will they be lawyers, doctors? Will they be technologists? Will they be data scientists? That's part of our challenge and opportunity. And then finally, and I mentioned this, across the region, the smart city, smart government movement and watching it come online, which has been slow. We've talked about it 20 years now, but starting to pick up. That's actually laying the required foundation and groundwork for things like AI. Without that collection of the data, we heard the mayor and the governor earlier this morning, which was brilliant, I think, talk about specific uses of data in their regions. That's the kind of foundation that's required across the region. Then, of course, we have the challenges. And I put this in the global context because MENA, the MENA region, is prone to the exact same challenges that we're now seeing, across the board. We could, again, spend days, months on this, but at a top level, the major challenges. Climate change, right? Climate change equals climate risk, and climate risk equals investment risk. Any of you that have followed the major investment players across the globe, they are now looking at their ESG mandates and metrics around climate change, climate risk. If your region, if your business, if your farm, if your mine is at risk having to do something with the climate, then it's a business risk. It's an We're coming out of a pandemic. It's not going to change. I think everywhere across the globe you see, with the World Economic Forum for years, and this goes back now 10 or 15 years, every year, year in and year out, when we sort of came together, what were the major risks? Pandemics was on. It just didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. Boom, now it's happened. For 10 years we were talking about it. Once there, we're never going to go back. It's now a part of life. We need to deal with it. The global energy transition. We're going to talk about this a little bit more in depth. And again, this is incredibly impactful for the MENA region, given the resources around traditional energy, petroleum, oil, and the like, and yet the opportunity as the world changes to electric vehicles, digitization, mobile phones, everything digital, that's going to be a big change. Regional, global conflict, and social unrest, we don't need to go into that any more than we all read at the headlines in the newspapers every day. And then I actually went into the presentation after Dr. Katani's comments this morning and said, well, yeah, AI, the challenge around AI4B, business, how do we move that to AI4D, development? And we're going to end with the big question, how do we move that to AI4G, AI for good, which we've heard over and over again come up, the ethical, moral issues going forward. I love this one. Again, we don't need to go into details because so many of the previous speakers touched on these. The global now equals local, and local equals global. Whatever we do at the local level has global impacts. Whatever happens at the global level has local impacts. And then finally, that persistent and deepening inequality, which it's a shame that that's becoming persistent and deepening, but we see it over time. Rather than technologies and economic opportunities equalizing the playing field, it looks like it's simply creating more and more gap between them. So here's what we're going to do. And I thought we'd have a little fun, although this is very serious. What I wanted to do is take things that could be generalized across MENA, talk about a couple of subject areas that aren't usually the topics for technical artificial intelligence or digitization, but have meaning for MENA and specifically in Morocco, and specifically this region, which, as I understand, is one of the Morocco's vibrant wine regions, although I haven't tasted any yet. Hint, AI Rana, hint. And is also in the heart of some of Morocco's mining and minerals. So we're going to talk a little bit quickly around here. And the idea here, I'm a firm believer in talking about real world things as exemplars of what could happen or what's happening generally, as opposed to keeping things just theoretical. So right now, in Morocco alone, the agricultural sector overall is about 19% of GDP, which is actually very healthy. Across MENA, it ranges from about 3% to 20% across MENA. So that's actually a good, healthy index. The wine subsector, this is great. Current annual output for Morocco's wine subsector is about 40 million bottles of wine, which makes Morocco the second largest producer in the Arab world, and the second largest exporter of wine in Africa, with South Africa obviously being the largest. That was quite a surprise to me. So Morocco is the second largest exporter of wines in Africa. Morocco's wine industry employs more than 20,000 people, and that's growing, and generates about 130 million euros annually and has great potential for growth. So when you're talking about where do we go in the region from 2022 forward, this is an interesting and fun opportunity. 15 to 20% of Moroccan wine is exported, which presents a huge growing trade and foreign exchange driver. That's a big opportunity. Foreign exchange is at the lifeblood of most countries and regions' economic drive. What do we have going outside that's bringing cash inside? And then, interestingly enough, and again, this I think is attractive to this area, the wine and the eco-agriculture trends globally are becoming one of the hottest tourism trends. And I should probably have underscored, tourism equals dollars, 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 no matter what, any way you slice it. It's one of the hottest tourism trends globally, and including in Morocco, which I think, again, is a really interesting opportunity. So you have a vibrant industry that's very tradition-bound, and that's going to be part of what we talk about here, and that's part of the allure of it, the tradition, history of wine production in Morocco, that has a big opportunity to be an ever-growing piece of Morocco's and other countries in MENA economy. So of course, and this is kind of what I was brought up here to do, is like put up the good stuff and then, oops, put up the possibility of the risk. These are obvious ones. We don't need to get into them deeply. But the climate environmental risk factor for all agriculture, but wine specifically, is huge. And just as an example, the agriculture output predicted throughout Morocco is predicted by the World Bank to decline 17% or more over the next year and years, specifically due to the ongoing drought and water conditions. That is climate risk at its most obvious. Drought, excessive heat, floods, extreme storms, etc. Fire. I hail from California, which is huge wine country, agricultural country, and if any of you remember just a few years back, a number of world-renowned vineyards were absolutely leveled by wildfires in California, and we've been suffering through drought, heat, fire over the last 10 years with more to come. Pests and disease. So these are some of the key risks, specifically for wine, but specifically for agriculture. And then business disruption. It's always nice to look at sort of the two sides of it. Again, we talked about the wine sector being potentially a really good export component of Morocco's GDP and other countries, and also I guess somebody fell out. And then specifically around tourism, so localization. So business disruption, supply chain disruption, we all saw that during COVID, what can happen to any industry without thinking ahead about how do we maintain our supply chain, how do we have controls over that, transportation, export, and distribution. So keep that in mind. Oops. And then just running through a few of these, we won't go through these in detail because I'm sure with the other speakers we'll get into some of this discussion, but these are just a few of the specific AI risk management. I put that in terms of, we all know where artificial intelligence, data, technology can help with efficiency and production, all that. What about the risks, which can be catastrophic to a business or a sector, even if they've done everything correctly? So certain AI platforms, including some of the ones we worked on, are working on predictive risks having to do with climate change. Everything from early warnings for drought, heat, flooding, wildfires. How do you actually get out in front of those before they wipe out? Fill in the blank. Wipe out a farm, wipe out a business, wipe out an industry. Intelligent, smart watering. Anytime you see smart these days, you're usually, one of the previous speakers talked about, behind the curtain there's some sort of AI going on. Anytime you see smart. Smart watering, feeding, fertilizing, the exact amount of water to put on a vine or a row, given the heat, given the temperature, given the time of year. These are algorithms that can be scientifically deduced and deployed. They're not at scale yet, but they're starting to be. Precision harvesting, production, and distribution. Similarly, when is the exact right time to pick, clean, put the grapes on a truck, get them to market? I actually just had the pleasure of actually picking a wine in California. A friend who owns a winery calls us up and said, tomorrow's the day. Get your boots on, and 6 a.m. we were there helping to pick the grapes, just as an experience. But again, that precision of the exact day, time, how to get it to market. Something that's coming on across all agriculture, but specifically around wineries, smart and green viniculture, reducing the carbon footprint, increasing energy efficiency, water optimization and management. And this is one that cuts both ways, which is it's good for the world, it's good for the environment. Done correctly, it actually becomes a productivity enhancer and cost saver for the farm, the vineyard, whatever. Done correctly, and that's always the issue. And then pest and disease management. So this just gives you a flavor of some of the AI-enabled, AI-driven applications that are available, are coming online for agriculture writ large, but specifically for wine. Now I'm going to turn to one that's a bit more down to earth, no pun intended, but brings home some of this. So the mining sector in Morocco. And I want to start off with why mining, other than, again, Morocco actually has a fairly healthy mining and minerals industry. If you go back to that, one of the challenges, the transition to the new energy, which is global. Guess what drives that transition? We call mining and minerals ground zero for that, because everything that goes into an electric vehicle, those new batteries, the cell phones that we bring, the sensors and everything that goes into there is taken out of the earth. Rare earth minerals, cobalt, lithium, copper, silver, across the board. Guess where most of it's being extracted? Right here on the African continent. So this is happening right before our eyes. The World Bank has estimated that mining and related extractive industries will increase 500%. 500% within the next decade, specifically driven by that need for those raw materials. And now you're all probably thinking, oh my gosh, mining, that's one of the most traditional, conservative, dirtiest of industries out there. Yes, so keep that in mind. The mining sector in Morocco, to bring this now back to home, including copper and silver, represents 10% of Morocco's GDP. That's actually a nice chunk. 90% coming from phosphates. The actual dollar amount, for 4,224 million in the fourth quarter, and that's up from the third quarter. So mining is actually on the uptick, as it is globally everywhere. And then the other side of this is most of those extractive sites are located remotely in rural, generally very poor communities where you have communities at risk. So the risks here in mining: failure and catastrophic risk. Community impact, what happens to them environmentally, business disruption, environmental impacts, reputational risk. And now to bring this really home, some of you may have read, and this is literally fresh off the presses, just this past week, September 11th, the Ifrane tailings dam collapse in South Africa. So right before our eyes, tailings are the hazardous waste that mines, the byproduct that they put, usually with water and other kinds of chemicals. Basically wiped off the mat, much of it. There's at least one person who's already been confirmed has died, and numerous others that they're looking for. The whole community, hundreds, if not thousands, are homeless. This is one of the easiest early warning systems to put in place around that kind of geohazard or geo-collapse. All the data are there, and they were there in this mine. They simply were not being collected, integrated, and utilized in a way that could have helped to, A, predict the collapse, or at the very least, help mitigate the response and the results of the collapse. They're real-time photos. You have the before mine, you have the after there, so you can actually see where the breach was, where the tailings waste just sort of rampaged through the town, and a few of the pictures, these are just from a few days ago, of the devastation. And this is only one example. This is not an example of some of the largest mine and dam failures that have happened globally. But it's just such a perfect example of the data are all available. They can be collected and put, could actually help to avoid that. And I should note here that that same application applies to any critical infrastructure: dams, reservoirs, transportation, rail, roads, water, wastewater, waste management, any kind of critical infrastructure. Slides on key needs to set the others up. You're from every data. Again, smart, like setting up that infrastructure to collect data. They're putting sensors on every, well, that's great for a city of 4 million. Get the data. Again, you want that data to be trusted, transparent, and timely. When I say timely, it means the timing is relevant. It's either real time or it's good historical data that we can use to start training. And then I'll end here, back to the big question. So the big question is, how do we go from how do these innovations start? Go from AI for business to AI for development, what we're here talking about today. How do you take that and apply it maybe in a non-business setting, or at least in a business setting where there's a community, social, environmental need? And then moving to the real big question, AI for good. And I'll leave this to the group here. Now, how can the MENA region and Morocco specifically, we're here, work towards a collective and comprehensive AI for good model and ethic? That's the big question. I don't have an answer, so don't ask me. That's for you to answer, or for all of us to answer collectively. And with that, thank you, and I'll turn it over to Teresa, right?
Thank you very much,
thank you, everybody.
Dr. Gregory. I will do differently than my colleagues, so I will give the floor to the second speaker and collect the questions at the end of the session. It will save us some time, and you will thank me. Richard, the floor is yours.
Thank you. While he's fixing these slides, I want you to do me a favor. Take out your phone, all of you. Take out your phone. Right? Google Julia Roberts' brother.
Julia Roberts' brother.
Julia Roberts' brother. Google that.
Okay, go.
All right? You got his picture? Then look at this guy.
It's a party trick he's used around the globe.
This one.
What's up?
Yeah. So we talked about AI. And I love Greg's issue about wine. Professor Curtin, my good friend, he has told me there's a great wine in Morocco, right? I've seen the white wine called Le Riz. I have not seen an actual gray wine yet. I'm asking you, is there actual gray wine in Morocco that's gray, not white, not blush, but gray? Anybody? Dries. Dries gave me a picture of a purple bottle and said, this is gray. So I'm going to look for that bottle before I leave to get some gray wine before I leave this country. You heard about AI. My question to you is very simple. It's going to be an interactive conversation. Is Morocco ready to fully implement AI? Yes or no? No. Yes or no? Who says yes? Raise your hand. Why, Nibala?
I think they have the talent from one side. They have the determination. The government, we saw the leaders at local level. And then there is a kind of leadership
Okay.
in this regard. We have very good universities that they are dealing with AI, maybe in a master's degree and even some conferences. Okay, I think very
Okay, who says no? Who says no?
Yeah.
Yes. Why? Why no?
I think it's no because we lack the lens to know. It's the data.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
And
Yes. You want to say yes or no?
I would say no.
Maybe?
I invite you to my talk tomorrow.
Unfortunately, I'm leaving at 4 o'clock in the morning.
I share
Share before you leave because I have to go to a wedding. So think about it. Who says yes? Little show of hands. Are you ready for it? 1, 2. Who says no? The majority of people say no. And the reason for that was the data, correct? And it's not only Morocco, it's the entire world, including the United States, okay? Because when COVID hit the United States and all the beautiful stuff that you counted on was no longer on the shelves of stuff you wanted to buy, you know what the biggest issue was in New York to find? Anyone know? Toilet paper, all right? You couldn't find a roll of toilet paper if your life depended on it, all right? And that's because you have a system that was not properly prepared for the pandemic because the data was not properly set up that way. And when you put all your eggs in one basket, where everything's coming from one country, and that country can no longer sustain itself because they're also dealing with the problem, the whole world is messed up. And that's the advantage that the MENA region has, because now people are diversifying. They're not going to go into one major source of supplies anymore. They're looking for other people to supply them information out there. So we talked about the lack of data. Close this one. So what's missing in terms of data? Are you using sensors? Are you using sensors at all in any place? Except for the roads when you have a little key and that pays the toll for you. What sensors are you using in Morocco today? Agriculture? Are you checking air quality?
Yes, actually.
Yes?
Different sensors, for example, environmental parameters, and for example, soil moisture, nitrogen, potassium, different sensors.
Okay, well, take yourself as governor out of the equation and ask about other places. Are you really using sensors fully throughout the country?
No.
Okay. Are you using Internet of Things fully throughout the country? Okay. So until you actually do that, AI is at the beginning stage for you guys. We all agree? Okay. So how do we graduate to a higher level? No, but how are you going to collect the data? What's the plan to put data in place? You put sensors and platform. Sorry? Yes. more collaboration, all right? More data. So when we talk about the life cycle, all right, of AI, data sourcing is still the main thing. Until you have all the data in place, you're not going to be able to do anything. But it starts at a very simple level, okay? You have to have the right policies in place. And one funny thing about data is that if you look at in terms of openness, countries like the European countries and the United States are very open. Other countries are less open in terms of where their data is coming from. So I'm going to ask you a question. What data do you consider confidential? Military. Why is that? Like what? You guys want to have a really closed environment, all right? No one's touching the data. We were not going to let anybody see the data. All right? Why military? You have exactly, let's say you have 1 million soldiers. Is that important or not? Why is that important? The U.S. gives you every single soldier they have on open data.
Because the reaction of other countries depends on what you have.
Okay, I just gave you, every European country publishes all their military data except for the nuclear code. So why are you so different that you have to hide your military? Yes? Yes. Exactly. So the culture is hiding data. And it's not just Morocco, by the way. It's most of the world. All right? Yes?
For the U.S. or very sensitive data that is not...
Absolutely.
And even in the military.
Right, but there's...
Some data are not sensitive.
We agree. We agree. But most data is. For example, if you own a house, is that confidential? Yes? Who says yes? What? How is that data confidential? You want to hide? Okay, hide the house. No one knows I own the house. What?
You don't want to, what's happening in your house?
No, I don't mean the fight between you and your husband. I'm talking about the actual house itself. All right, the actual house. The fact that you own the house. Is that public data or private data?
Public data.
It should be public.
It should be, but is it?
It should be.
Richard, if you look at the big companies in the US, Google, Amazon, those data are not public. They keep it and they hoard tons of information.
Yes, they know more about you than you do about you.
Exactly. So in some ways, the question is a bit, it goes at one, you don't have the same corporations in Morocco that the likes of Google, Amazon, or Microsoft that hoard, or Facebook, that hoard enormous amounts of data. And they don't share.
Right, but it's a private company. At the government level, you cannot force a private company to share its data.
Yeah, but from an impact level, from a development level, from a societal
Yes.
level, my question is, why should they, I mean, I actually, in some ways, I would trust the government more than the private sector in this sector.
I fully agree with you.
Right?
I
And yet
agree
we're
with you.
allowing the private sector to hoard tons of information
They should,
without any accountability.
they should be open. I fully agree with you. They should be open, all right? Because all you guys out there who are social media hounds, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram knows your entire lifestyle because you tell them your entire lifestyle. Look, I'm eating a cake today. Click Instagram. Is that private data? Not anymore. We know you like chocolate cake. So if I know you like chocolate cake, I will send you information about chocolate cake all day long, which is what they do, right? So even the government itself, the government has to be able to allow data to freely flow, right? And the irony is, the more open a country is, the less trustful the people are of the government.
Transparency.
Right? Because if you ever watch any news, you see the Europeans and the Americans always trashing their government, right? Biden's an idiot, he can't do this. Trump's an idiot, he can't do this. And all that is open. You won't find that in other countries. In fact, I worked a lot in the Gulf region and Central Asia. Whenever they put a survey up there, they give you 3 options. It's great, it's good, or it's very good. Correct or not? You've seen it. You probably have seen it on multiple websites when you do a survey. We're the best, we're the second best, but we're still good. All right? There's no fair, there's no poor, there's no negative out there. All right? None. 0. All right? Because the culture is not there. And she mentioned a great word, culture. And once your culture gets open and you force the government to do things, then you have the research capability actually doing something. Right? If there's no data available, you cannot predict anything. So sourcing is important, right? The data. The quality of the data is also important, right? Look at your government websites right now, your open data websites right now. How many actual data do you have on there? Do you have 1,000, 2,000 maximum? So 2,000 for a whole country. Right? And Gene this morning told you the Americans have 500 million. Okay, so okay, let's have a bet. Next year when I come back here, what would the number be? Rana is really tough. AI Rana says the same. Explain why Rana the same.
Because the people are not sharing valuable data that we can harvest in order to use it for the good, the greater good.
Exactly. So all the researchers out there, where are you getting personal data? So someone else the internet, and someone's going to say that's accurate. Why? Because it's on the internet. So you have to start looking at ways of changing the policies of government to make them more open. Right? And until you do that, all the research that you're going to get are from foreign people giving you your data, you know, and they're probably going to charge you for your data on top of that. Is that a good thing? All right. And how we evaluate, we adopt the data. So AI, I mean, is Kareem still here? Kareem just trashed AI this morning completely here, man. He just took it, just stepped on it all day long and said it's garbage. All right? It's somewhere in between. All right? AI is not going to solve all your problems because your brain is a special brain. Even if you damage it, right? Even if you damage the brain, the neurons itself can recircuit itself. AI can't do that. All right? All the jobs that are monotonous, right? Like the man said, hammer, 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 hammer. All the cars now are built by robots, right? In the old days, guys kept screwing the screwdriver, fixing it from car to car to car. There's no one involved anymore. It's all done by robots. So everything that's going to be repetitive, AI will take care of that. AI will help you make decisions, right? But you cannot depend 100% on AI. Right? Here's a very simple question for you. Everyone's talking about driverless cars, right? If a car gets into an accident, whose fault is it? There's no driver. So whose fault is it? Is it the software? Is it the person the car manufacturer? The guy sleeping in the back seat while the car is driving? Whose fault is it? It is, because it's going to be a big legal issue. If you're a lawyer 10 years from now, you better be an AI lawyer. Because all these things are going to be flawed eventually. And you're going to be the one who's going to make a lot of... anyone who wants to be a lawyer, be an AI lawyer. Because you saw the damn picture that Greg just put up there. There's going to be a lot more of that happening unless you put sensors and all these things out there. Right? We already believe that the climate change is going to destroy the entire world. Glaciers are falling down. We're all going to be flooded in 10 years, right? That was 10 years ago. We're still not flooded yet. Right? In 2030, we still won't be flooded yet. Right? Because if that was true, I'm being very sarcastic, but if that was true, your beautiful house on the beach would be worth nothing. right? Yet, from now, 30 years from now, right? You cannot, if I go to you and say, you know, you have a beautiful house on the beach. $1,000 for that house right now. You gonna sell it to me? Why? Because people are predicting the worst case scenarios all the time. Right? We are the worst case scenario. We're all gonna be drowning in this thing. Right? Ocean's gonna be up 3 inches. All right, this is 3 inches, guys. Unless you're a low-lying country, a low-lying country, it's not gonna affect you that much. The Pacific is gonna get messed up, all these little small islands in the Pacific, that's for sure. But you have enough technology to basically bypass these things. So when it comes to data, that's the most important thing that you have to deal with. Nothing else. And ethics. Because when you create an algorithm, that algorithm doesn't think anymore. You know? It just it does exactly what you tell it to do. So in terms of facial recognitions, if you're a person of color, the odds of you getting the wrong recognized are extremely high. Right? Yes. Person of color, you're going to get caught for the wrong reason. Why? Because there's no data involved in that. So the data has to be the majority of the case that comes out this way. And Morocco, Tunisia, I don't know about, I'll put Algeria in, Jordan, the whole MENA region, and the Gulf. The Gulf countries I work a lot with, they spend a lot of money on AI. They spend probably too much money on AI because that's the new buzzword and they have money to spend it. It doesn't mean they're actually going to make a lot of impact using the AI. But as you know, when you have money, you can do whatever you want to. You guys don't have the money the Gulf has. So take a different approach. So give me an example of a good approach that you guys will use to get to that level of using AI more fully. Anybody? Yes. Mm-hmm. Right. Excellent. That's the best way of doing it, right? And then the infrastructure is the next big issue. Data. Because Microsoft is giving you too much money. In fact, because Facebook, Microsoft are no longer doing anything, really produce anything. They're just buying. Just bought. Think about that. Innovative guys out there. You want to make money? Think of something new. Build it up. They're not going to stay 20 years. I spent. Why is that? Am I the only one with kids that old or what? You have kids who are basically at a certain age where they know they're not going to spend that kind of time in the company. Why? The mentality has changed. They want to be able to work from home. They want to be able to enjoy their life and also get a good paycheck. Right? And if you look at what the world is coming to, it's going to allow you to do that because you can work from home at any time you want to. There are very few jobs where you physically have to be online. The police, fire department, teachers, even teachers, you can do it online. So think about these things out there. 5G. Do we have 5G in Morocco yet? Do we have 4G in Morocco yet? Because you're still using 3G. When I went to Burkina Faso, there were big sign, we have 3G. That's why you're Burkina Faso. So get out there and try to implement as much as you can your infrastructure and your data. Those are the first two steps to get to where you want to get at. And if you don't touch the infrastructure and you don't touch the data, please don't tell me, what do I do next year or the year after that? All right, we talked about data analytics. I'm not going to touch that. AI, we all did that. This is a good map. If you look at the openness, right, US is number one in terms of openness. If you look at access, China becomes the bigger player there. Because there's two different mentalities. China is not as open as the US, but they believe everyone should have access to the internet. That's that big circle right there. So what is the Morocco version? Do you want to be open, or you want to have access, or you want both? Everyone will say both, but if you only have choice for one, what would you take? Openness or access? Access. Who says access? Don't be shy. I'm not gonna bite you. So you can raise your hand very high. Access. Anyone else? Access. Openness. All right, so 2-1, 2-2. The other 100 people here don't vote for anything. Seriously, what would you do? You are head of the government. You have two choices. You want to have an open, or you want to have it accessible?
Access.
Connect 0 0.
Let me add something.
Yes.
Accessibility
Yes.
will ensure first that all the population is at the same level.
Yes. A minimum standard.
Minimum standard.
Yes.
And then you can have it.
Yes.
Everyone agree with that? All right. No? Okay, go for it.
No, I think there's more elements in that. I mean, looking at the China model, why access is important. There are other considerations,
Such as?
Surveillance, such as...
So you don't trust China? You don't trust China? Yeah. Huh?
So I think this is openness could be sacrificed if the idea is captured and
Okay.
widespread.
Do you really believe that the U.S. is not tracking you?
No, I think they are.
Okay.
There's a little better chance that I get my fair say in court. And I mean, example, it's not anything against China itself, but
I know.
Cases where you want to live in a society with more access to internet or an open. This is the issue.
Yeah.
This is why
And I think, because if you put access first, openness comes automatically. Because you're putting pressure on that government to make sure that you do that. Right? These are the big trends out there. You've seen most of them already. I'm not going to focus on that. I know it's expensive. And I think you're doing the right way. Pilot, make sure it works, and then move on. There's no big bang issues at all. And this is my index here. So if you look at the US, this is the 21 AI index out there. And what do you notice of the top 15 countries? There's not one MENA country there. Okay. This is where you guys rank as a MENA country. All right? Any surprise there?
Morocco is 84.
Morocco's 84. Is that too high or too low? You don't know.
It's in the middle because we have 160 more than 160.
Sorry?
It's worse than the year before.
What was the year before?
It was about 79.
Okay. So you were at Tunisia the year before. So if you look at the first 6 is normal. That's the Gulf countries because they're going to spend a lot of money there. But you look at number 7, Egypt is number 1. Huh? Sorry?
Very good.
For all of us? Unless you're Yemen, of course.
No, I mean, Egypt is ranking
65, the top 1/3, yeah. Okay. So if you look at it, most of them are in the top 50, all right? So the bottom 3, Iraq, Sudan, and Yemen, that's because of the situation in those countries out there, all right? I'm about to leave, don't worry about it. Last slide coming up. This is the lessons learned here, okay? If you don't teach your kids about this now, that's the future workforce out there. And they have to be IT savvy, IT ready to take over the next generation. Inclusive, right? You have a big issue here between people living in the farms and people living in urban areas. Everyone should be there. This is why access is more important than openness to start off with. Innovation, right? Think outside the box. I know it's a slogan, but actually do that. Because if you look at everyone right now that's making a lot of money, Airbnb, Uber, you know, every time I go to Airbnb, I get upset. Why? I'm in another country, my money's going back to the United States. Right? Every country should have their own Airbnb, and make sure a portion of that money stays in your country. But you're not doing that now. No one's doing that now because they're so big that you can't do it. So you want to get to the baseline of moving forward on it there. Accessing content, collaboration. Is Morocco collaborating with any other country? On AI? Who? Rana says no, you say yes. I'll let the government talk first. Who are you working with? Canada? Okay.
Strategy. So mainly these are discussions.
Okay. But what about at the regional level?
Regional level?
Yeah.
Probably with discussions with Smart Dubai about and Saudi Arabia also. So those are the discussions we're having right now. Egypt also, because we're keen to know, because it's a quite similar country. Mm-hmm. It's a North African country also. Tunisia, we work a lot with Tunisia. So
5 is very important because you can't do it by yourself. Collaborate and cooperate. And the last one is entrepreneurship. Spend money to educate people to be entrepreneurs. Right? No one wants a 9-to-5 job. I had a 9-to-5 job at the UN for 25 years. That's where I met Greg from. We did the survey together. I'm more happier now than I was in the UN. And the UN is a great place to work. Right? I'm much more happier now in my own company, starting up there and giving advice and helping people through. And not just forcing it on you. You have to make your own decisions. Right? It's not up to me, Greg, or Sel to tell you what to do. You got to make the decisions. And that decision should be straightforward and in your best interest, not in someone else's best interest. Okay? And for that, I'll say thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. I'll pass the floor to Teresa. I'll just put her online.
Great. Can you see me now? And can you hear me?
Yes, Teresa.
Yes, you can hear me? Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Well, we won't see me for long. I'll put my slides up. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the opportunity to participate in this important event. I think as Greg Curtin has indicated, it's quite a significant event in terms of the team, if you will, who envisioned this national development model, envisioned this kind of launching this conversation at a national and international, with international partners to explore the potential of AI in my world, I think about AI from the perspective of public value. I'm a person who studies public sector IT innovation, and that'll really be my frame of reference. So let me just take a second to get my slides up and running. And while I'm doing that, say hello to my colleagues who are there with you. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there with you today, but I am there in spirit. So are you seeing the slide or the slide notes page? Jihad, can you give me an indication? Yes. Are you seeing you're seeing the correct page? Okay, great. So again, thank you for this opportunity. It's always hard to follow Richard. Richard and I have worked together for many years on a number of events, and boy, no one can engage or challenge an audience like Richard can. So I'm excited to have heard his presentation and Greg's, as well as looking forward to Dr. Malouli's. So I want to talk today, I want to give you a little bit of a background about my frame of reference, where I come from, and then begin to talk with you about some of the potential and practical realities related to the creation of public value through the use of AI as part of a digital transformation agenda. So I'm a member of the faculty and now staff. I serve as the Associate Vice President for Research and Economic Development here at the University at Albany, which is one of the 4 university centers that makes up the 64 campuses of the State University of New York. So we are the largest comprehensive university system in the US, serving about 1.3 million students statewide. Albany, the university, one of the university centers that I'm affiliated with, is located in the little circle. We are located in the state capital, which also has a lot to do with the relationship that I and my organization that I've worked with for many years, the Center for Technology and Government, have with New York State government, as well as with other large-scale New York City and the federal government here in DC, but also the opportunity then to work with colleagues at the UN and many other places around the world from our home base here. Here at the University at Albany, we have the number 5 ranked program in information technology management in the public sector. And a lot of this work is based on the research that comes out of an organization I hope some of you know about. If not, we'll have an opportunity to tell you more about it. But the organization called the Center for Technology and Government is an organization that I've been part of for several decades, 2 decades, I should say. And our focus is on transforming public services through innovations in management, policy, and technology. And our interest is digging down deep into the intersections between the technology and the various policy and management enablers or innovations that need to occur. And we look at these intersections by bringing together perspectives from industry, from government, and also from academia. So a big part of the work that I do is focused here. It's on digital transformation and public value. And in my world, digital transformation is the use of digital technologies to innovate and change how organizations create public value and prepare for the future. So it's important to have these 2 concepts in mind, digital transformation and public value. And public value, going all the way back to Mark Moore's seminal work in 1995 from the Harvard Kennedy School, public value is the value created by government through services, laws, regulations, and other actions. And it is through the lens of public value creation that I want to make a contribution here today, thinking about digital transformation in the form of AI technologies and public value creation. So I was very happy or very interested to see in the conference concept paper conversation about the public value potential of AI. And it is these kinds of conversations that AI can conceivably enable 79% of the Sustainable Development Goals that requires us to pay close attention to what it will take to, in fact, realize the potential of AI to actually deliver on some of the capability, some of the potential of AI, even if not 79% of the SDGs. Also from the concept paper, there was this statement: AI is unfortunately not a standardized plug-and-play tool you can simply apply to different programs in very different development contexts. And this is, again, really at the heart of my comments. Context matters. And as we think about AI as a generic capability, as a generic potential, we have to think about AI in context, understanding the specific policy environment that must be created within a specific context in Morocco, in Tunisia, in Haiti, in California, in New York. These are the places where the colleagues on this panel hail from. What are the actual specific capabilities that are required within these various contexts in Morocco in order to realize some of the potential of AI in delivering on the SDGs. My perspective is about varies. Adopting AI certainly is an innovation, but also understanding what value AI can produce when being integrated into different policies and procedures and practices, whether it's in the government, civil society, industry itself. How does that present itself? How do we understand those differences? So what we have learned over the years through the e-government survey report and many other mechanisms, thanks to Richard and Greg for that really seminal piece that's been a touchstone for so many of us. But increasingly, we're looking at the challenges that our countries are facing when they are trying to effectively leverage digital technologies and create public value. So our ability to understand the potential of AI technologies is critical, but in my world, our ability to understand what are the enabling conditions, what is the enabling environment that must be created in order for us to actually leverage the potential of technology in so many different policy domains, so many different contexts, so many different critical problem-solving situations. So context matters. Attention to context, as it says here, is more and more critical, particularly according to a good friend of mine, Terry Takai, who used to be the Chief Information Officer for the U.S. Department of Defense, is now a scholar at the Center for Digital Government, and luckily a Global Advisory Board member at the Center for Technology and Government. She's a person who calls specific attention to the complex and dynamic world that we're living in, and calls again attention to digital transformation and the importance of context, that we must understand governments, organizations, and the policy environment within which we seek to operate. So a challenge for the leaders, in my experience, and then through my research, is creating the kind of creating the kind of attention to capability and context. There's tremendous attention to understanding algorithms, understanding the technical compute requirements for AI. How will we move data from place A to place B? But we deeply need to understand what is it that we're looking for in terms of public value creation, and then what will it take specifically to generate that value? This is a set of questions that often gets overlooked, right? A lot of attention is paid to the innovations in technology, the innovations in our, for example, in our networking, marvelous innovations, critical innovations to our potential uses of sensor networks, as folks have mentioned, to be able to understand complex environmental changes. But we also need to understand how to get those data to the compute environment. Who will use the conclusions of who will use the results of those activities? How will they use them? Are they prepared to use them? And so we have a larger context question that needs to be attended to. I'm also a member of the National Academy of Public Administration here in the US, and at the change of the presidential administration a couple of years ago, the NAPA brought together a group of colleagues to focus on 10 different grand challenges that we're facing the US government, one of them being making AI ready. And it's very much like the conversation we're having here. What do we need to do in order to leverage the potential of AI? And in that process, we heard from a number of folks from across the different levels of government here in the U.S. And I'm not drawing very much on the region. I recognize that, but my remarks here today draw from my specific experiences with NAPA and others. So we have important questions that are unanswered about bias, security, transparency. But I think one of the really important questions, and I've heard lots of conversations about that already today, and that's marvelous. It's absolutely critical for us to pay attention to. But there's also a tremendous need for understanding what it really takes to do this. I'm repeating myself, but this is such an important aspect of this work. And part of it is also what we're discovering is a challenge associated with clearly understanding the return on investment that folks are looking for. So you can see from this last quote or last statistic at the bottom of this slide that despite the kinds of improvements we're seeing in decision-making and employment productivity, again, back to your concept paper about, sure, a chatbot's making lots of differences, and we're absolutely critical, frankly, here in the US in the context of the pandemic. But in fact, only 13% of the state chief information officers recognize that that AI generated some cost savings. And in part, we're seeing this is increasingly having to do with it's hard to measure. We don't know what we're measuring. What kinds of changes might we expect to see? And therefore, how do we track those changes? So I want to talk briefly about a piece that I contributed to with two colleagues, Ronnie Medaglia and Ramon Gil Garcia. I encourage you to take a look at this paper. This was this was an introductory chapter to a special issue from the Social Science Computer Review. Again, another perspective, not just the high-tech journals, but the social sciences. We're trying to understand what is it that we need to be thinking about in the governmental context in particular, if we are to realize the benefits of AI. So a couple of important observations from this paper, again, I encourage you to read it, is that we did a couple of different things. First, we took a look at as many of the government policy papers that we could find, national level government policy papers. Then we looked at the literature itself, academic literature, looking at AI in the public sector. And then we did an analysis of those documents. And so what we discovered is that most of the work isn't actually doing the kind of systematic analysis of the benefits, challenges, et cetera, of AI in government. There's a lot of optimism, a lot of conversations about what is likely to happen, how it could happen. But we discovered in that analysis, both in the public policy papers as well as the academic literature, that we really don't have our handle yet around the governance of AI, the governance of data. I think there's been a good conversation in this panel about exactly that, governance of AI. Certainly, I've heard comments about the trustworthiness of AI. But increasingly, we are recognizing that we do not have a systematic approach to understanding the impact of different investments in AI technologies. So this is a gap, if you will, in the literature. And as we think about investments being made to advance Morocco and other countries toward this realization of the SDGs, you have to have this kind of novel approaches to impact assessment, methodologies. How will we track the return on investment? So some of the investments that are required to create the kind of enabling environment that is necessary to be able to understand what are the capabilities that are necessary in different contexts. Here are some of the investments that I would recommend that we're making ourselves here at the University of Albany. And they fall into scholarship, compute capability, and workforce development. And I think these are three very, very critical aspects of what needs to happen as we move forward and thinking about creating a paradigm shifting investments. So certainly next generation scholarship requires next generation collaborations, but it also requires us not to think about the problems that we're using AI to address today, but the problems that we need AI to be addressing in the future. And so I have many colleagues who are who I would consider fundamental artificial intelligence scholars. They're looking at the nuts and bolts, if you will, the fundamental AI. Some of you are in the room, computer scientists. And they're beginning to understand that, to an extent, they've kind of got this structured AI, AI with structured data, structured problems. There's kind of it's pretty much in the bag. They've got some things they can continue to do to increase efficiencies and effectiveness, but it's the ill-structured problems where input and output and data sources are not clearly defined. So the examples that our university here and colleagues across the US are focusing on are some of the things you've already talked about today. Extreme weather events, for example, and public health emergencies. How do we understand these ill-structured problem spaces, and how can AI be used as a tool to pull all of the various disparate data sources together to enhance crisis decision-making? Crisis decision-making is a factor that influences our ability to develop agriculture, to develop health, to develop communities. We have to get our hands around AI and extreme weather. And to do so, we have to move beyond our ability to bring people together around structured problems and begin to understand more deeply how we think about ill-structured problems. So foundational AI development can focus and create new strategies, new paradigms, new technologies. So how do we understand local context as input to creating enabling capabilities? This also is a very, very big challenge that requires scholarship. It requires collaboration. We have to understand when a particular innovation is successful, that it is returning the kind of investment that is envisioned, that is creating public value. It's necessary for us to understand what were the conditions that led to that success. Can those conditions be replicated? Which conditions cannot be replicated? Which conditions must we invest in? Do we need to create, for example, new compute capability or a new workforce if those things don't exist? But together with all of this, we need new impact assessment opportunity in Morocco, in the conversations that you're having, to think about these gaps, if you will, in our ability to fully appreciate the potential of AI, and to then hold ourselves accountable to ensuring that the investments in the technologies that are being made are delivering the public value returns we anticipate, then that would be marvelous. So some of the additional investments that are being required are in compute capability. A lot of our research activities require new levels of compute capability. So here at Albany, we have a new initiative supported by our governor where we'll be implementing a $200 million supercomputing cluster, making Albany supercomputer cluster one of the top in the nation. And we're making that commitment because we recognize that we need to be contributing to the new insights, new ways of addressing these complex public problems. Workforce development is, I'm just on the time. Okay. Workforce development, another really critical investment. And again, here at Albany, I think a model that I think is an important one is our new curricular initiative, which is taking us, we call it AI plus X. So every department across campus, every discipline is being asked over the next 2 to 5 years to create an intersection in its courses with AI. We need, as I think Richard said very clearly, we need the next generation workforce to understand how artificial intelligence relates to everything from athletics, as we say here, to zoology. So this is just a couple of captures. Again, the creating the compute capability, changing the curriculum, and partnering with key partners to focus on critically important problems like weather and climate change in transportation, climate change in tourism and wine production. I love that conversation. I really want to make sure we save that. So here's just a quick snapshot of Albany's AI initiative. And it's a model. I'm not claiming it's the model, but it's a way for universities to think about the contributions that they can make towards understanding the potential of AI, advancing the capabilities of artificial intelligence, and ensuring that we have the enabling environments across the sectors to realize the potential. So key takeaways from me, creating public value through digital transformation is key. We all know that, to the realization of Agenda 2030. We need this kind of capability in order to address the most wicked problems of our time. We've talked about them: extreme weather events, pandemics, droughts, fires, floods, etc. So in my view, creating public value through AI requires us to significantly invest in attention to context. We must build an understanding of specific contexts and use that understanding to invest in context-specific innovation. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you about digital transformation, AI, and the public value. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Teresa Pedro, for your insightful presentation. Will you stay with us until the end of the session, or should I take some questions now?
I can stay with you. I can stay with you. I have a meeting that starts in about 35 minutes.
Okay, so without any further delay, I give the floor to Dr. Mellouli. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, where is it? I'm not Microsoft user, so this one? No. This one? Yeah? Yeah, this is it. That's good. Okay, thank you. So, first of all, you gave me the hard task, because presenting after Teresa Pardo is very difficult for me. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for staying. It's a little bit, but thank you for staying. And I will try to be straightforward. So presenting myself, I'm Sel Mellouli. I'm first of all here as a professor to present some of our research that we are driving on the AI with the government agencies and with also NGOs. And I will present 2 cases with NGOs and 1 case with the government. But also I have the other hat, which is Deputy Vice President at University Laval for Studies and Students Affairs. So what I'm going to present is very easy. We'll focus on 2 SDGs. I will go straight forward, but I can share with you my slides and so on. So let's have the time to ask the questions and exchange with the audience. It will be excellent. So my examples will focus on 2 SDGs. SDG 3, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages, and SDG 8, promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all. And I will show some examples how we worked on these 2 SDGs. So our question is the following. And also I put all the references for all these pictures and figures that you'll see from all our publications. So this research started from a simple example, very simple. In Quebec City in 2013 or 14, something like that, the mayor came out and decided to change the way that they collect garbage. He said instead of making it 1 day per week, so we have 1 day per week, they collect the garbage of the homes. He said, no, we'll do it 1 time per 2 weeks. It was his decision at that time. But it was very impressive because it was a high tolley on the social media and Facebook and people writing. And I played the game with my students at that time. And I said, please, can you collect all what the people said? And then went to the mayor's office and said, are you able to analyze all this data and look what people are saying? So he said, no, I don't have the staff for. So then I told him, if you look at this data, you will understand one thing, that even collecting the garbage 1 day per week doesn't work. And you have different realities in the city itself. And if you look at the reasons, you may change the whole model that you are using for garbage collection. So then started with the students, asked this question, what we can do and how we can do it, and how we can help our decision makers to capture some information. It's not always the truth, but it is part of the information available for our policy makers and decision makers, and how we can bring them this information that is scattered, that is unstructured, and then help them to take some decisions. And this information is very bizarre. So it can be short, one sentence, it can be one paragraph, it can be of different form, using different types of words. And even we participated and we helped the university 4 years ago when they did their strategic plan. They consulted also all the university community. And the university community at University Laval is 50,000 students, 50. And it is 9,600 employees, including professors and so on. So it's a huge, but the university went more than that. It consulted also all the stakeholders with whom the university is working. So the private sector, the public sector, cities, consortiums, and so on. It took 4 or 5 months. But the university then knocked to my door and said, oh, my friend, I have more than 1,000 pages, including plus reports, plus emails, plus posts. What can I do with that? And we don't have the staff to read, to understand, and to summarize this data. So I brought 2, 3 students. One of them now has done his PhD itself on this particular problem. And we tried to figure out how we can help them to understand. And I think we did a good job. I will not say a perfect job, because with AI we never know it is perfect or not. But I think it is a good job with the different discussions that we have with the board of the university at that time. So we have this challenge, unstructured data, and if we add photos, we add videos, it is more than complicated and so on. And what can we do with that? So let me present some case studies. The first one is about the SDG 3. So this is very interesting because it is an NGO in Tunisia. There are more than 1 million people following a page called Where is the Sideline? Wino Trottoir in Tunisian dialect. And this is amazing because after the Arabic Spring in Tunisia that took place, people are more freely speaking. And they are reporting everything that is going wrong. Everything. So photos, posts, it's amazing. And this NGO said, hey, my friend, I need to bring this data to the ministers. They have to look at that. Because maybe it can help them to understand the reality on the ground. So we worked with NGO to try to capture this Facebook data, analyze it. But it was very challenging. Because you can have a sentence with a Tunisian dialect word combined with an true Arabic word, with an English word, with a French word, in the same sentence, and then try to understand it, you know. So we figured out with some of my students how we can tackle this. As always, it's not perfect, but it is working. And we try to give them these are some of the sentences that we can find, and we try to give them an idea about what was discussed. And then people were discussing more about environment, about road security and parking, about health and civility, blah, blah, blah. And this is very interesting because we can bring not only these subjects that were raised, but also examples. And we can point them to what people said. We have 100,000 messages talking about that. Here they are. If you need to dig into, so you have the data itself classified and so on. So it was an interesting case. The other one is with another NGO, but this is in Quebec City. So I took the 2 examples because to show similarity. And I like it when Teresa Pardo said, even it is not for the MENA region what she presented 100%, but there are similarities. And this is in Quebec City, where the city decided in a part of a district to revive, to redesign. And she asked an NGO, please, can you collect the data from the citizens in this neighborhood and understand what's going on? And then we got some fund from the federal government, and we helped this NGO to capture what people are saying. And then we found that, amazingly, that social reasons people raised against this project that the city would like to do, and why. And then we we fitted the NGO and the city with all the information behind this. But this was very interesting because this is the combination of French, but also the Quebec dialect. So I need to understand what's being said and so on. But it was very, very tricky. So these are things, I think, when we look at the way forward, is we can contribute and work as researchers, universities. My president university said, God, going to Akhawayn, you need to come back with a partnership. So some of the partnership that we can do together is to work with Morocco. And we saw this morning in the presentation where they deal with the Moroccan dialect and so on. So we can combine our expertise and build new solutions that can help our policymakers and decision makers. But what is very, very interesting is we pushed a little bit forward. As a researcher, we know analyze data, but we push a little bit forward with this analysis. And we did 4 other case studies besides this. And this is the doctoral of the PhD of Amal Marzouki, one of my students. She finished it. She's defending in mid-October, but she's done. You can read also one of her publications in Government Information Quarterly about the different issues that we can find, that stakeholders or governments can find when doing public participation. But it was very interesting in the different case studies to find that the information that we can collect can be categorized as semantic dimension, where we have talking about the topic, a spatial dimension, because sometimes we talk about the space. We can say the intersection of these 2 roads. So you need to find the intersection, name roads, and so on. And also temporal dimension, last week, next week, and so on. So this is very important to help how we can categorize the data and bring it and give it more meaning for the policymaker. But one of the amazing things, and then I will come to what Karim said, this is difficult AI, very difficult. One of the games that we played that was very interesting as a result is the government of Quebec came to my office, knocked the door and said, please, can you help us to understand AI? But for the employees, they need to understand. So my answer was, I will make them understand that AI is not understandable. This is right. This is it. I said, oh, wow, how we did it? I said, this is very easy. So there were in the convention center more than about 100 persons around the table. And we gave for each table 4 or 5 persons. We extracted some data from Twitter at some times at that point. We used our algorithms and smart UX and asked them, could you please, we did the same game. Could you please tell us what the data is talking about? It is the same data set for the 24 groups. It is the same algorithm. But they need to play with the parameters and interpret the data and give us the interpretation of this data. It was funny because we have had 24 different interpretations of this data. It's the same data. So I looked at the government, I said, listen, your challenge is who are going to trust from all these people? So yes, it works. AI, it works. Algorithms are giving results. People are very happy. Each table is very happy with its results. But you as a policy maker, are you happy? I don't think so. Because you have 24 different answers. And this is a big challenge for governments today, is really how to interpret the data, if the data exists. How we can interpret it and what does it mean interpreting data. And this is what we tried with the government. We told them that with Université Laval case study, which was very interesting because we're talking about research, international development, students, services, so different stakeholders too. But what we did is at each point where we gather data and try to interpret it, we met with the board of the university. 11 persons at that time. We put them in the same room, and then we tried to come out with the same understanding of the data. And we played sometimes a little bit, we executed the algorithms with them so that we ensure that the board of directors is interpreting the data in the same way. We haven't played the game with all the professors and students and so on. But we wanted to ensure that the policy maker, the decision maker, will have the same interpretation of this data. So we told them that maybe one of the things that you can inspire yourself about that is that your policy makers and decision makers, you put them in the same room and make them see the data, and they help and they contribute to the interpretation of this data. So that when you bring back this data to their offices, to their computers, to their desks, they will understand what are they having, and they can give a clear direction. Even I don't agree with their interpretation, if you don't agree, but you need the agreement of the interpretation of the policy makers and decision makers. This is the persons who are going to give the guidelines. So this is very, very challenging, and more research is still required about that. And another study which was very interesting, and I thank my colleague Jacqueline Corbett, with whom I work at this paper, and we got very interesting recognition about that. It was recognized as, in 2017, as the best paper on sustainability by the AIS Association. And we worked with Quebec City for this study, but it's very interesting to show that there is a whole ecosystem for the SDGs. It's about SDGs and smart cities. And we showed that there is an ecosystem between the sustainability sphere, which is the UN, which is the NGOs and so on, who can impact the political sphere. Because even your mayor will say no. If there is a pressure coming from outside, he will say yes, at some extent, because otherwise he will be out of the loop. And then he will impact the administrative sphere, who are gonna execute the orientation of the city. But when the administrative sphere will work, they will inform the political, and the political will be very proud. He will inform the sustainability sphere, I did my job, and so on. And this is very interesting, and we did it on 2 different projects. These results came out from 2 different projects that we studied in Quebec City. The first one is water management in Quebec City. The first time I understood, and I learned that it is better to drink the water from the public system than buying a bottle of water. I was impressed by the number of analysis and they do. And the second one is about green trees. In Quebec City, there is a system, very impressive too, that they know for each tree, where is it? Each tree in the city, each one. They have a system managing each tree. And we discussed with them how they manage these green spaces and these trees, and they show you the process. If they want to cut a tree, they know where is it, why, how, when, all the information. What is the type of tree? All information. And this was amazing. But we put all this perspective on the smart city concept and also sustainable development goals. So next steps, we are still in beginning. Even if you look at the publications, there are many publications coming out about AI for government. If you look for different special issues running out and so on, but we need still more theories from an academic point of view. And I don't think, and I believe, that if you need more theories, we need to work hand in hand with government agencies. We cannot, in our offices, a researcher trying to understand. I'm not a policy maker, and I'm not a guy working in the government, but we can bring, as researchers, think with the policy makers to find ways to better understand all this AI ecosystem. The ethical issues, we raised several questions about that, and think we need still to understand and find new ways. To what extent this data analysis can be reliable for policymakers? We discussed this yesterday. And this is, 1 million data, you put a result. Who can assess that your result is good? But you train it about 3 million data set, but you have 1 million too to work on. So who can say that you have the good result? The only thing you cross your fingers and you say, that's a good result, this is it. And when you look at these data that you find in these different platforms, social media, ensure that this is not representative of your citizens. There is still a digital divide. And there are not only digital divide, but there are others who don't want to express themselves in the public space and so on. So cities, governments need to figure out, yes, there is a source of information, but there are other sources to capture all these opinions. So thank you for attention. I hope I was in time. And then I think we have time to questions. Yeah. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mlouli. All this presentation raised in our heads lots of questions. I'm sure that among the audience you have questions if you are not tired. Questions? Let me start with the first question. And sorry? Who? I did not see you, sorry. Okay. Sorry.
Okay, I'm asking a question because I promised Sahel to propose a question then. No, but I mean, my question is about this issue of how to make decision based on data and so on. I believe for sure in some area where there is some gray decision that the data or the content is taken from social media and so on, it might not be really, we cannot analyze data and take really sound decision. But I mean, in some cases where the data are reliable, like in administrative process, for example, or from IoT, where we have the level of soil or the level of water or whatever, there is something deterministic. I mean, there is science behind that. There is 1 + 1 = 2. Then in some area, I understand that the decision-making might be very difficult because there is no science behind it, there is no facts, but there is opinion. And this is right. We cannot make decision about it 100% that it is exact. But in some cases where you have a lot of data that are difficult to be manipulated by human, but can be easily manipulated by AI, we might arrive to a very good decision, I believe. I want your opinion about that.
This is a fantastic question. And you told me they will ask questions, so my thought about that, I will not say my answer, because I don't think we have an answer. But my thought about that is, first of all, social media data is not 100% reliable. This is for true. But governments cannot say we will not look at this source of data. This is very important. And what I said at the end is, governments, if we would like to take good decisions, they need to combine this data with other sources. And one of the things that they can do is meeting with these people, inviting them, going on the street. And let me come back to example of University Laval, because this is very interesting. One of the things is that when they invited people in open session to discuss, we recorded all the discussions. And we transcribed all these discussions, and we processed all this data, which is now reliable at some extent. So the university at some point has had the information what is being said in the social media, but also confronted with more reliable data, and they gave the board of directors, they are right, wrong, this is another thing, but they gave more weight to the reliable data, to what they collected from the people when they spoke to them directly. But they haven't ignored the other data. But when there is contradiction, they opt for the data that they collected from these personal meetings. So this is a way to balance. But at some point, sometimes decision makers don't have time to organize all these meetings and so on, but they would like to know a little bit. So we inform them, and they can decide to consider everything, to consider part of it, but they're informed. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I give some thought about that. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Sahel. I have Teresa, who is raising her hand. You want to switch on your camera, Teresa, and ask your, yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, great. So thank you for that question, and thank you, Selda. Very similar to my response. I think one of the ways we think about this is it often is a function of the decision that we're seeking to make and the decision makers, right? So what is the culture of decision making in a particular organization or a particular environment? How have they used data in the past? Is data often been a particularly important piece of the decision-making process? We see in some organizations when we create all kinds of analytics that they're referenced by the staff, but never really used by the actual decision maker, right? So how do we understand the context of decision making? And therefore then how do we have to take into account that context when thinking about the extent to which or whether the analytics that we now can generate, the insights that are now possible, are actually going to be used in the process of decision making. And so this comes back to management and policy. It also comes back to workforce. So for example, we have lots of colleagues who are involved in health data analytics, obviously public health, a big part of our recent complex environment. And we have lots of folks who are leading health departments who are not data scientists, who have not had a long tradition of using data in the way that we imagine that they will. And so again, this gets back to context. What is the decision process? Who are the decision makers? What is their readiness to be able to actually use the kind of data that is increasingly available as part of their decision making? What are their obligations? Is that a policy process where we require deeper understanding of how data is used in decision making, that kind of transparency? A, is it available? B, is it used? And again, that comes back to the ROI conversation. So that's really all I wanted to say, is that in my world, whether data is actually used for decision making is a function of the decision and the decision makers and the context within which they're operating.
Yes, my question is, how did you go about the validation process? The thing is that you said that you presented to the board information, and you even ran the model with them. So how did you go about getting from them a unique decision, a final decision? What was the process? I guess it's a terrible process. And I have a second question. What is the data that you actually shared with them? Because it's a sentiment analysis. Did you go, it's a traditional sentiment analysis. Did you add a kind of emotional analysis to that? Because depending on the kind of data you share with them, you will have a completely different reaction. So I wanted to know about your experience.
So thank you for this question. So two things. I will start with the second part, and then I will come back to the first part. The second part is we did with them is topic modeling more. So I haven't looked at the emotions and so on. But this can be very interesting to make them understand what are the emotion of writing and so on. Now for the first question, the data is very different. So it was a combination from social media data, from emails, from reports, and from the analysis of online on-site meetings that the university conducted. So these different sources of information. So when we showed them the data, we have never combined all these different sources. And then we showed them that when the social media people were talking about these topics. So, you know, the computer will never say what is the topic about. It will give you a bag of words for each topic, and then you decide how you can interpret this. So we played this game. So we tried first with the algorithm to optimize the number of topics, and said are these bag of words have a certain meaning for you? And what can be this meaning? And then we played also with the parameters of the algorithm. So we showed them that social media said that. Then the emails are saying that. Your reports are saying that. And then the audience, the on-site is saying that. And now let's discuss. First of all, do we agree on that? No, we changed the parameters. And then some of the colleagues will say yes, no, this is it. Discussion takes place. And then they agree at the end. And if they don't agree, the president will say, this is it, I'm done. So about the process, at the end, because we cannot last years and years discussing, we understand there is no agreement. This is her understanding. This is the way we're doing it, and done. And this is it. So this was the process when meeting with the board. It was just for information. Practically, it was very tight in time. So you cannot spend 3 hours with the board. It's impossible. So you have 1 hour, present the result of one thing. And you go tack, 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 and this is it, and done. So let's go for the next step. Meets next week, 1 hour, you bring the emails, discuss about that. They don't have time. So this is one of the main constraints that our policy makers have, is that they don't have also time to spend to understand. So you need to focus with them, and then at some point there is one will cut and say, this is it, and this is how it was done. I hope that answered your question. Yes.
I think also politics plays a great role as well. So even if you have the right data in place, the politician can say, no, I'm going this way. So, and that happens quite often. So it's not just having the data in place, it's making sure that, because for example, if you just say, let the black box answer the question, then if you go to a school and this school's underfunded, the black box will say, fund this school. And as a politician, I might not want to fund this school. I might want to fund this school instead. And therefore, I'd make that decision. So politics, unfortunately, trumps data too often in the world we live today.
Even for COVID?
COVID was worse. COVID was worse because this is beautiful. No. Thank you.
I also want to jump. I just want to jump in on this as well.
She's going to protect her. She's going to protect her governor, but I'm taking the first shot at the governor. The theory was very clearly Cuomo.
Okay.
Governor of New York, his name is Andrew Cuomo. Former governor, they threw him out. He was touching too many women, so they threw him out.
So you're a Republican.
I'm leaning towards conservatism. No, but the issue is very simple. You have people who are old living in nursing homes who got COVID.
Yes.
The data clearly tells you that people who are old are more susceptible to getting COVID and getting more ill, right? He sent them all back to the nursing homes, and many of them died. That's where you can't say that I'm not following I follow the science. He kept saying it all day long. The science never said go kill people, all right? It never said that at all. You knew exactly what you're doing. And the reason he did that, he wanted to protect the hospitals. You can't do that. You cannot take a group of elderly people, send them back to the same group of elderly people, and expect a different result.
Did the science provide for the first answer we got on COVID by the president?
No, that's what I'm saying. When politics takes over the thing, the data becomes an ally of the politician. So whoever's in power will take that data and embrace it for his own or her own benefit. Yeah. Okay, Teresa, knock it out.
No, this is great. I mean, it's not just how the data is used, but also, in fact, how the data is collected, right? So there's a lot of what we also learned here in the pandemic in New York, but maybe I think across the U.S., is that COVID was disproportionately impacting individuals from our minority communities. And one of the challenges in taking time to understand that is that the data doesn't represent racial ethnic backgrounds, right? So if we're not tracking certain elements of important data, if we're not tracking certain data elements, we're not going to know about what's actually happening. And then the extent to which a political operative may use that data or not is absolutely important, but a different story. But what data is collected, how do we think about the process of collecting data? And then to what extent is that data collection process or the algorithms themselves biased by the individuals who are doing that? Even, unintentional bias is a serious problem in our data collection and management processes. And I just want to talk, I think folks may know about this, but certainly here in the US, when different court systems were using AI for decision-making about sentencing, setting prison sentences, even when the judges were informed that the data was that the analytics were only correct about 40% of the time, they continued to use the results. And that's a problem, right? So that's a serious problem. So how do we think about the utility of the analytics, not necessarily always as a replacement for the decision maker, but as input to the decision making and the decision making process. So I think data is how it can get manipulated. Richard, is really a whole field of study in its own right.
Well, thank you very much, Teresa, for staying with us till now. I was the moderator. I did not have the chance to ask my questions, but I will make sure to ask them over dinner. So, Richard, you will answer my question. Same for Dr. Mallouli. Thank you very much all for staying with us. And we'll go and enjoy our dinner.
When will be the dinner? At what time?
Okay, sorry. So dinner at 8:30. A gala dinner. Okay. Okay, I'm hungry.